Okay, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us this evening and agreeing to chat with us about the mysterious agenting world that every single writer wants to know more about. Welcome, and it's so nice to be talking to you again. We had a very interesting conversation recently, and I'm really excited to actually share some of the things we discussed with the rest of my writers here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And it's really nice to see you again, too. You put on a great event, I must say.
Thank you so much. Okay, so as I said, part of the the goal of this evening is to dispel some of the mystique around like agents and agenting. So why don't we just start with you and start right at the beginning? Because I think to most writers, agents are these beings that kind of live between the saints and the angels up on a cloud. We don't know how who they are, what they are, how they got there. And they're all powerful, it seems also.
No.
So can you tell us how you started? Like tell us how does one get into agenting in the first place?
The funny thing is, I think almost everybody has some bizarre coincidence or some bizarre, just amazing thing that happened that got them into the industry. For me, it comes down to filling out my what I want in a roommate form in college. And I had a roommate who was so good at talking her way into anything she wanted. So she got herself a big agency job as an intern and then handed it to me, and then a publishing job, and she's handed it to me. And the way she told it, she was just like, "Hey, you like books? You're hired." So I don't know if that was true. I don't know if it was nepotism on some level, but she was very good at getting hired that way. And with those two, I got an internship at a little radical magazine that got a lot of death threats, actually. We were all okay. It was fine. And then 2 weeks after I graduated, I got hired as an assistant, which is incredibly lucky. It would never happen now. This was pre 2008, of course. There was a much bigger budget for everything. The food was incredible back then. I'd always come back with what my boss called the cheese report. Whenever I would go to a book event, I would report on the cheese. Back then, the cheese was notable at publishing events. And yeah, so I was there for 13 years, which is really,
Mhm.
really unusual to stay somewhere for 13 years, but I was happy. And then in 2019, I was offered a position at my current agency, and she had a vision I couldn't turn down. My
Mhm.
friends said it was like an engraved invitation from the universe. I had to take it. It was really hard to leave that earlier position, but I did. And
Right.
um, it's it's so interesting how you can learn so many different things from so many different people in the industry. And Tamar is one of those people who is so efficient and so straightforward and knows so many things. And she's incredible at selling books abroad. And sometimes when I'm negotiating with an editor, she gives me something so audacious to write back and ask for that I can't help but giggle. And it's just one of those things where the industry is so subjective. You have to learn from different people because there is
Mhm.
no one right way.
That actually raises the question for us who aren't in the industry as to so you kind of like stumbled in on it on the coattails of this incredible roommate of yours.
Yes.
Um, but what made you think you'd be interested in the first place? Or once you got the job, if it was just, oh, it got to do with books, I like books, this is a good first step. But what kind of made a catch for you and made you think, actually, this is what I want to do. I want to be an agent.
I did not, I admit, know anything about how publishing worked when I went into that first internship. I was just a girl from a small town who could barely, find a blazer that looked good. And here I am, whisked up to the 36th floor, cloud level, where people are yelling at each other and making $1 million deals. And it was just this huge transition. So no, I had no idea what I was getting into at all. I just knew I loved reading, and even though I found everyone in that first office terrifying, I still liked the work, and that was a really strong indicator.
And what made you decide to work on that side of the desk, that you wanted to stay in agenting rather than move into editing, for example?
Well, you get so much more freedom. You get so much freedom because you are spending company time versus company money. So I've been lucky enough to work at agencies, and not every agency is like this, but I've been lucky enough to work at agencies where if I love something and the author says yes, I can take it on. And that's not something that editors get to do. Editors have to run everything they want to buy by their whole team. So
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
being able to get in on the ground floor is really nice, and to be able to talk to an author and say, well, this is great, but if you do X, Y, and Z, it'll be incredible, and then we can sell it. It's so gratifying. And to be able to have that relationship with them beyond one book is really nice too.
Hmm. So can you help us understand the difference in, agencies that how they're different business models, for instance?
Yeah, well, okay. So, starting from the experience of an author, you can have anything from someone who will call you every day. I mean, that's pretty extreme. Call you up, be like, I saw this thing in the paper, you'd love it. I thought of this for your book, how great. You can be actually genuinely friends with your agent, and that's not that unusual. On the other hand, there are the folks who are like, send me your manuscript when it's perfect. I don't want to hear from you until then. And, the kind of person who will pound on the desk and say, editing's not my job. So
Hmm. Hmm.
that's absolutely a thing too. And depending on the business model of the agency, some agents are on what's called a draw, where they're given a certain amount of money to live on, but they have to earn it back in sales that year or the next 2 years. A lot of agencies have quotas. For whatever reason, the number seems to be around $1 million in sales a year, which is just ridiculous, given how advances are these days. And if you are in an agency like that, that means that, yeah, you have very little time for your clients because you have to just deal in quantity and only look at the works that can make you a lot of money. And to me, that sounds like a really depressing way to live.
Right. And stressful too. But, yeah,
Stressful for everyone. I mean, I'm
stressful
sure
too.
it's stressful for the authors too, because then they're probably getting notes from their agents, hey, it's been a year, where's your next book? And then there's just this pressure to constantly produce.
Hmm. Hmm. So you were saying that Tamara is quite different and that the way that she works is quite different. So if you're not on a drawer and you're not on commission, like how does it work? What is Tamara's magic formula for
Well,
this?
we are on commission. That's how it works. So
Uh-huh.
most agents are on commission versus a
No,
draw or
commission,
a
sorry,
quota.
I used the wrong word. A quota. Like
Yeah.
you're not on quota, you're not on draw. So you're free to bring in as much work as you want or as little work as you want, and then um
I mean, I think things would get tense if I wasn't bringing in any work. I haven't ever tried it. That sounds kind of sad for me too. I'm always looking for something new, and honestly, my clients keep me quite busy too. They're
mhm.
luckily making all kinds of beautiful things for me to sell all the time, so that's really helpful too. I opened a queries for 4 months, and I can't even believe how many I've received. And something bizarre is in the air because every week I seem to see that about 20 people in my inbox are getting offers from other agents, and that's just so much more than is normal. So I don't
Mhm.
know if there was some post out there saying pretend you have an offer to get an agent to pay attention to you, or if there are just suddenly a bunch of new agents, which I know there are a bunch of new agencies. But yeah, I'm really curious where these offers are coming from because it's just, I mean, to see something like 60 people get offers in 3 weeks is a lot. It's unusual.
Mhm. Mhm. So you're either looking at an uptick in the acquisitions or you're looking at fraud or
I'm
something
genuinely not
strange.
sure. I was
Yeah.
talking with an agent friend today. We had heard a story of a brand new agent maybe 3 years ago because there are all these agent Slack channels, right? And I can't stand any of them. It's so much drama. It's like reality TV in text form. So, but I had heard that there was an agent who had taken on something like 23 clients her first month. And we were,
First
you
month.
Oh, yes. And so people were
Wow.
like, this is a really bad idea. There's no way you're going to do everything you need to do for everybody. Like, this seems like an irresponsible choice. And apparently, the agent said something like, well, I'm from academia where we have a work ethic.
Oh, ouch. Dinger.
What a way to make friends. So, yeah, I don't know what ended up happening to her, but
Uh-huh.
it could be something like that too. It could be some new agent who's just making tons of
Mhm.
offers, assuming only some will pan out. I don't know.
This is so from the author's point of view, it's good information to know th this concept that agents can kind of like comfortably take care of a certain number of
Mhm.
authors. What do you think that number is? So that if I kind of look at an agent's client list, I can go, oh, that's looking a little bit too big. I'm not going to get the attention I want, or
I don't know that there's an exact number because not every author is doing something actively at the same time.
right,
So some agents have, 150 clients, but it's okay because most of them write a book every 10 years. And so it just kind of spaces itself out that way. I think that's a little more common in nonfiction, but I don't think there's a perfect number. It depends on the clients too. I've certainly had clients who wanted hours of my time every day, and if I had 30 of those, there goes my entire life. So, um, I don't think there's an exact number. I think it really just depends.
do you have like do you have in terms of numbers of projects that you're working on at the same time? Like,
Oh, they
how many
all they
would
all
you
tend
be?
to come in at the same time. That's just one of those, weird things about the universe. You will get five manuscripts all in the same week from your clients and then, have heard nothing for the previous 6 weeks. So,
Like,
yeah, you just kind of tell them, okay, I'm going in order. I received these, unless something is particularly urgent for one reason or another. And yeah, you just tell them I'm going in order. I'm going to assume a week per manuscript that I edit. I'll probably have notes to you in about 6 weeks, that kind of thing.
right. And do you when it comes to like reading and responding to queries, you just mentioned earlier that you were open for 4 months.
Mhm.
So do you open and close? Um,
I had been closed probably about 2 years. My goal was to feel that I was caught up, and I never got there. And I'm starting to think that feeling caught up and inbox zero are both a myth.
yes, I
I think it's
agree.
a myth designed to sell books. That is actually my theory. It is a, wouldn't this be lovely, if only it were possible? Well, buy our 10-step system and it will be, that kind of thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, I opened again mostly because I knew that fall was coming up and there's something special about September and October because that, for whatever reason, is my, and I think a lot of people's luckiest time for finding a good new project.
Hmm. Hmm. It, that's interesting because as a publisher, that's all, and an author, that's also the time you want to be out on the fall list. So yeah,
Absolutely. One of my clients got moved from summer to fall and she was panicked and I was like, "Oh no, this is a compliment."
that's
The
right.
big
You
the
want to be
biggest books come out in the fall.
right. Yeah, and that's the good note for everybody else too, because I mean, it's something that an agent knows that a lot of debut writers don't know, that part of the negotiation can actually be to come out on the fall list because you might get a bigger bite and everything. So yeah, fall is a magic time for books. I think it's also because, you're finished, you're not sandy from the beach anymore. You want to kind of cuddle up with something good.
Yeah.
And yeah. So nothing in this conversation so far makes it sound as if agents are short of books and queries coming in.
Oh no, the
So,
opposite.
right. So that's why I wanted to ask you, what made you then start Manuscript Wishlist?
Oh, okay. So even though we can end up with hundreds of books in our inbox per month, there's still always that one perfect project that you imagine, and you know it's out there somewhere. And it's particularly frustrating when you see something that would have been perfect for you and nobody sent it your way. I remember being at conferences because in the past I did so many in-person conferences. I remember one summer I had 5 and 7 weeks, and so I was flinging myself all over the country, going to these
Hmm.
things. And I happened to run into one of these authors and I was like, this is perfect. Why didn't you send this to me? And she said, well, I didn't know you wanted it because you hadn't sold one yet. And I was like, okay. And then I was thinking about it like, well, everyone must be having this problem because whenever you want to expand into a new genre or subgenre, if you haven't sold one yet and you're not already on Publishers Marketplace having had one, nobody knows that you want it. So I remember emailing a bunch of friends being like, hey, on this day, what if we all post what we wish we had in our inboxes on this hashtag? And this was back when, Twitter was in favor of the person using it. The algorithm liked humans at that point. And yeah, I remember looking and it was trending locally on Twitter when so many people suddenly started posting. And it was just so exciting. And there was so much energy behind the idea of what do I wish I had? And I think it was just such a nice way of seeing that agents aren't just sitting there looking to say no, they're dreaming about what they wish they had.
Hmm.
So, yeah, we got incredibly lucky. Did that, there was a blog version of the site. People were literally emailing me to change their commas around, things like that. And then two writers in California who also worked in tech built us a version where people could log in and update their own. And that made it possible to grow because, frankly, I was changing commas as fast as I could, but I could not keep up with the requests. So,
Hmm. And now it's a very robust and established site.
mhm.
Um, and in fact, a lot of it seems to be the first place where a lot of writers go, to actually search for agents. And
Yeah, we're
so
trying.
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, we're trying to keep it really positive. What do I wish I had versus I do not want the following books, which are terrible. We don't want anyone to
Hmm.
post like that. But yeah, my hope is that we can kind of see inside an agent's mind and the things that they love.
Hmm.
Because ultimately, you don't want to be a project that an agent takes on because they're like, nah, why not? You want them to fall in love with it.
Right, right. And then there's a slight pivot, and you went from there and started thinking, oh, first of all, you have this agent's job that sounds so busy
Mhm.
before you even start. Then you have Manuscript Wishlist on top, and then you added on Manuscript Academy. So
Yeah.
why?
Well, I was standing around the campfire with Julie Kingsley. So I met Julie the day that her first startup had blown up because her team and another team were pitching a similar idea to venture capitalists. And her team was all women, the other team was all men. The men got funded. Her startup had just imploded that day. So she was on a bus, ran into my colleague, Catherine. Catherine had a feeling that we would get along. And so she brought her to a party I was at. I met her, she invited me to this conference, and she just kept saying, I have a feeling we could do something together. So we were at
Mhm.
this gorgeous conference in Rhode Island, the sort of place where, the water was sparkling. There were all these gorgeous buildings. I almost stole a kayak. It was lovely. And we were standing around this campfire, and I was saying, this is amazing, but what about the writers who can't spend $1,000 before the hotel to go fly across the country for 2 days? And what about their kids? What about their parents? What about their pets? What about everybody else? Why don't we just do this online? And I guess I had a certain amount of false confidence from Manuscript Wishlist working out. It was the sort of thing where I didn't know what I didn't know at that
Mm.
point. And I'm glad I didn't, actually. I might have been too afraid if I had known how hard it was going to be. But amazingly, all these things worked out, and so many people offered to help us, and we had so much really cool technology going in. And the thought was always, how do we bring the conference to everybody? How do we make it
Mhm.
so that instead of, flying across the country and paying thousands of dollars and paying even more just to like pitch an agent, which you can do for free, why not make it so you can have a real conversation with someone who treats you like a person from your house and not have to pay for everything else? And
Mhm.
yeah, we've been so lucky to have incredible events and so many people want to work with us. It's amazing. You were kind enough to do classes with us and that was lovely. I'm just continually amazed by the people we get to work with, both on the faculty and
Mhm.
on the writer side. I don't know what we did right, but our writers are so smart and so talented and always
Right.
getting book deals. Like it's just incredible. It feels like every week we hear of someone getting an agent, getting a book deal. It just keeps working out.
Are you gathering those alumni together? Do you
Um,
have like a Manuscript Academy alumni published authors list?
we really should. It's one of those things where it's moving so fast. We haven't really
Yeah.
gone back to be like, can someone make a spreadsheet? I
Okay.
mean, I promise it's on the list. Can someone make a spreadsheet? And people don't always tell us, but just from the ones who
Right.
do. We have a long list. It would take
Hmm.
a long time. So
Hmm.
eventually we will get our act together to be like, hi, are you one of our alums? Do you have an agent? Tell your story here. Fill out this form, which will turn
Right.
into a spreadsheet. Ha ha. Yeah, so it's one of those things, you know.
Yeah. And I know that you guys are spinning off a lot of novel ideas and new programs that people get can get participate in. And yeah, it's been an exciting thing to watch. And I also commend your little tagline, which is the happiest place in publishing. I think we need a happy place in publishing very badly.
Well,
So,
it doesn't have to be unhappy. It's so frustrating because there are so many fixable problems in publishing. But everyone is so tired and so overwhelmed that very few people have extra bandwidth to actively go out and fix anything. And I was
mhm.
lucky enough to be in a position where I had time and energy and some technical knowledge, which is not very common in publishing. And I knew that if it was going to happen, I was going to have to do it. So I did.
Mhm. Well, congratulations, and on behalf of writers everywhere, thank you.
Thank you. Though I will tell you, in 2016, everyone thought we were crazy. They kept
Those,
saying, why would you have a conference online? You have to have a conference in person. There's no such thing as an online conference that works. Come 2020, we looked pretty smart.
right, right. Yeah. I think I it's amazing what COVID changed.
Yeah.
You know. Um, so I wanted to talk though about something that you said, like going back to it not having to be an unhappy
Yeah.
place. The reality is that for a lot of writers, it's a very, at the very least, frustrating, if not unhappy experience.
Hmm.
And last time we had a chat, this I noted this little sentence that came out of your mouth, which is that everything would be so much more happy, would go so much better if writers knew how to present themselves as someone who would not get an agent fired. So I was wondering, I was wondering whether you could like, so for this group,
That's so funny. Past Jessica is funny. I don't remember what I had in mind when I said that. I mean, I think probably it's one of those things where we know that we can't really control everybody else's behavior, you know? And so if an author is going to be the sort of person who is constantly causing problems with an editor or constantly causing problems in terms of refusing to do anything we say or being rude to people who are other clients or just making us look bad, all of that is so avoidable, though. All of that is
Mhm.
so avoidable and it's rare. But yeah, we honestly don't know what anyone's going to do. And I think that's one of those things where like, you know, we might interpret things you say in your pitch letter in the worst possible way if we don't know you. So if you say something that could be considered creepy if we don't know you, you might want to reword.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, until we get to know people, it is kind of, you know, we went through this scary phase, gosh, 7 years ago. There was an agent who got carjacked by an author because they knew she was at an event. And the dog bit her, and there was an FBI agent involved, and they tracked down a guy, and then it turned out the dog's teeth matched the bite. And, you know, after that, we were just in this terrifying moment of, okay, like I remember being on Twitter, like, all right, friends, here are some safety rules for you. You over here, I can easily see what your address is from this thing that you said. Maybe change that. You over here, you just said that you don't have a doorman. Maybe don't. You know,
Right,
like
right, right.
all of these little, like, hey, you just said you'd be at this event. Maybe tell people after. Yeah. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I think all that just got everyone really scared. And I apparently there are, in fact, FBI folks dedicated to helping out people in publishing. It was much more visible then and much more scary then. But apparently some things are still going on. So
Oh, wow.
yeah.
That hasn't even crossed my radar at all.
Yeah.
So,
So there is kind of an agency bat signal, you know, like if
mhm.
we don't use it, by the way. I know writers always think that if they, you know, have a typo or a bad comma that we're just going to tell all our friends to like avoid them or something. It's not like that at all. It's more, you know, This guy insisted on showing up to our office and wouldn't leave, and the doorman couldn't get rid of him. And then I finally saw him, and he, was very rude and mean and scary. That's the kind of thing that we're
Hmm.
thinking
Hmm.
about. Like, believe me, a typo is not going to even cross our minds at all.
So how could what would your advice be to writers who um want to present themselves and make an impression on you? And actually, you are a really good agent to ask about this because I love it when people contradict me, and Jessica contradicts me
I
because
do,
I
sorry.
keep I keep telling my authors, that in my experience, a lot of these author agent connections come because you've met someone, you've either met them or even through maybe personal. It doesn't have to be in person, but you've been on a Zoom with them before, you've done a consultancy through Manuscript Academy, or you met them at an old-fashioned conference, or a lot of times you're, excuse me, you're a referral through an existing client. But you're unusual in that you told me that you always, all your clients have come through the slush pile,
Yes, they
right?
have.
That's
Yeah.
that's a huge ding, 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 hope, 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 everybody. It's like here's Jessica. She's built this huge career all out of authors who queried you blind.
Hmm.
So I think that you mentioned that you get maybe hundreds in your inbox when you're open
Well,
when for
I
queries. Is
haven't
that right?
I haven't done the statistics this year. In the past, it came out to 39.98 on average per Monday through Friday
Per weekday, so
per
about
week.
40 per week.
Hmm.
How does one stand out and look like the right book, or not even the right book, but someone that you want to investigate further?
Mm. Well, I mean, so much of it is intuitive, of course, and so much of it is voice, and so much of it is concept. But I think one thing that a lot of authors get stuck on is that they edit everything down so much that there's nothing to grab onto. They're trying to make everything so unobjectionable because they think that any line that stands out could be the one that gets them rejected. And I think that's the opposite mindset. You don't want to send something perfect, you want to send something exciting.
Hmm. So the way I'm hearing that is that you don't want to polish it down so much that you actually lose your voice even
Right.
in the query letter
Hmm.
and sound like a very slick marketer instead of a very enthused author.
Yeah,
Is
I
that
don't
the
want to
gist of it?
wonder if AI wrote your query. And I will wonder that. I will wonder that if the voice is a little bit flat, if the sentences are
Hmm.
a little bit too straightforward. Um, I want to feel your humanity through the screen. I think that is really the best way of putting it. I want to feel like I kind of know you from reading your query. And I think it really matters how you feel when you write your query because the energy of that is going to come through. If you write your query when you're really excited about your book, it's going to come through completely differently than if you're just in a blind panic thinking, I have to get this out and I have to get an agent in the next 3 weeks or else, you know?
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
Even if we can't exactly pinpoint what's happening, there is something in there that we can feel.
Yeah, I agree with you. Um, I think that it's a really bad idea. I know a lot of writers give themselves a schedule.
Hmm.
And so the first batch of query letters probably high energy. We're gonna out there, we're gonna rock this. And then after the rejections start coming in, I think that can actually creep into a query letter. So you have to be kind of very careful about that.
Yeah.
Um, and it certainly crept into my college applications.
Yeah.
I, yeah, I know. But some applications were like, "Oh, I want to go to that school," and some applications were like, "Oh, they won't take me anyway." So, you know, you have
Yeah,
to get it in your
well,
voice.
yeah. Step one, throw out your calendar. You can't control how long it takes, and frankly, you don't care when it happens. You just care that it does. And I think it's also really important to note that anytime you get anything that is personal to your book, it is a huge compliment. So most authors, the first round, they get form letters, they do a few pivots, they start getting, personal, I didn't like blank. That's when you start really getting traction. I liked it except for blank. And then I really think it's very smart to start counting to see if there's a pattern. Sometimes it's all over the place. One person says, I don't like voice. One person says, I don't like concept. One person says, I hate the genre. Okay. That's just neither here nor there. But if you suddenly get three people, I do think three, a pattern like big math. If you get three people saying something similar, I think that is a moment when you want to just pause and really consider if that might be true. And there's that weird paradox of if someone says something and you get mad, maybe there's something to it.
Hmm. Hmm. I have a question though, with a certain book in mind. You had mentioned the last time I talked, you're very excited about a book that you've been working on, and you were talking about genre splitting,
Oh, yeah.
right? Uh, and and so you're a proponent of it. Like you enjoy doing it. It's worked for you. What if you have a book that is, people are writing back. It's good enough that people are writing back and they're saying fantastic things about you,
Mhm.
but it's like in between genres, they don't quite know where to put it. Would your
Mm.
advice be to like persevere, to like shift it more into one genre or the other, or where are you on this genre splitting, genre jumping thing?
I mean, there is no blood test that tells you exactly what your book is, right? Two people can look at the same book and even if they're both in publishing, shelve it differently. In general, I think if you're getting a lot of I love it, but no, you just haven't found the right person yet. But yeah, that book that I was excited about, and just for everyone out there, I sent it to fantasy editors as fantasy and book club editors as book club because it is technically both. Came out on Tuesday and it's doing great. You generally want to pitch it as majoring in one thing, minoring in another. It's pretty rare for a
Hmm.
book to be 50-50, but yeah, I think a lot of different books, depending on how you want to steer the emphasis of the agent, can be labeled different things.
Okay. You said how you want to steer the emphasis of the agent. So you see that as something that has to come from the author, or is that something that you advise most of the time?
I think, but inevitable though. If you say a work is fantasy, we will think in such a way, we will start with our confirmation bias looking for magic, right? If you say a book is romance, we'll start looking for cues of, oh, well, this person is described as cute, so they must be the romantic interest. It just kind of, tells us what we should be looking for, and we probably will read with that lens in mind.
Mm, okay. And then going back to what you said about, how you want to hear a voice and you want to feel like you know that person. You also said that you do think, though, in the end, that chances increase if the author can really describe their book in one sentence. Can you talk
Yes.
a little bit about why that's important, and especially in today's market and what that's
Yeah.
about?
So it's not actually a speed issue. It's not a just in case you happen to be in an elevator with an agent for one floor issue. It's just this bizarre thing that happens where if I'm editing with a client and I realize I can describe it quickly, then I feel like the editing process is done or close to done. It's just something that happens when the concept gels, I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah, when you can describe it quickly, that is a great indicator that it is close to ready.
Mhm. And so you, I'm guessing, want to see query letters where you can grasp the book very quickly.
hmm Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, it's
Yeah,
tough,
absolutely.
especially for fantasy and sci-fi and anything where you have to build the world. That is tough. And I think the biggest mistake most people make, and I was so happy to see other agents agree with me. We did a MSWL live panel all for fantasy on Tuesday, and they all said, yes, go character first. And I was like, yes, thank you. Please talk about the character first, because the way most people pitch fantasy is let me tell you about the physics rules for my world and let me tell you how every single thing works. Oh, yeah, and there's a person too. Whereas I think it makes so much more sense to meet the reader where they are and give them something emotional or aesthetic they can hold on to and something they'd understand in our world and then take them by the hand and lead them into yours. versus we are now on this planet. Here's how it works. It looks like this. It looks like that. Yeah, I guess there's a character too, but have I told you about what the clouds do? So that's
Hmm.
kind of, I feel like most people pitch backwards that way.
That's a good tip. Thank you. Um, so I'm going to let everybody ask their questions now, but I want to ask one closing question, and that is that you made a mention of the effect that writers have on agents' lives. And I
Mm.
thought that was really interesting because I don't think writers think about it that way. They kind of think that you guys are the gatekeepers to paradise, and we're all in a long line outside waiting to get in, and we're lucky. So can you talk a little bit about how your life and how well you do and how happy your day is like predicated on the clients that you serve?
Yeah, well, if you're going to work with somebody editorially and you really want to just kind of get inside their head, get inside their vision, walk around in this world they've created, you need to be very, very open to them, to what they say. You can't just think of them as I'm over here, you're over there. You have to kind of have this mind meld, right? So if you are mind melding creatively and they are upset, it's going to upset you too. It's one of those things where it's like I can kind of feel what they're feeling. And writers often feel things strongly, as do most creatives. And it gets to a point where it's, if you have a client who is every single day having some kind of emergency that isn't really an emergency, or, texting you on weekends, like, have you thought to worry about this? Well, yeah, I did think about it. It's fine. It does impact us because of course if you're that close to someone creatively, you're close to them emotionally too.
Mhm. Okay, we have our first raised hand, so Yvonne, I'm going to pin you as well, so you
Great.
can join us up here and ask
Hi.
Jessica your question.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for being here. I was a member of Manuscript Academy for quite a while. So I'm lucky to be agented, and I've had some good success platform. I had a HuffPost piece read by over 3 million people. Was on the Modern Love podcast. And so we went on submission based on a book proposal and sample pages.
Mhm.
But the memoir market is so hard for a non-famous person. How do you grapple with the different feedback from editors? Too commercial, too literary. We need to see more of a universal story. I mean, some people say add more prescriptive elements. What are your thoughts? And basically, I'm going to finish the memoir now. Your thoughts on just memoirs in this market?
Wow. Okay. So there are so many things that you brought up that are relevant. First of all, I do think editors often feel pressure to say something, even if they're not sure. So I would not run around chasing everything every editor says. Also, they sometimes will type up feedback they get from colleagues who haven't even read it. So unless something resonates with you, don't take it that personally. I think they think it's more respectful to say something to an agent. They don't want to give the impression that, they just said no because they feel like it or something like that. Um, and they don't always handle it well. I've seen new editors go on for paragraphs about everything they thought was wrong with the book, and I think they thought they were being helpful, but to me, I'm just like, why? Just send us a form letter, be done with it. So keep that in mind. Feedback from editors, take with a grain of salt because there is that sort of bizarre etiquette, even if I don't actually think it's more polite.
Mm,
Um, in terms of memoirs, that's interesting because it's all cyclical, right? And I'm sure you remember the days of Eat, Pray, Love. And right after that,
mm,
it was so much easier to sell a memoir. So all we really need is one big memoir to do well. And suddenly it's proof that they do well and they'll be selling well again. It's probably about time for that. I seem to remember that first it was vampires and then it was Eat, Pray, Love. So, once we get the vampires, maybe we'll get back to that. It is hard right now. I remember I sent out a memoir, gosh, a long time ago, but some editor said, wow, what a platform. This is amazing. Some editors about the very same person, well, we like the book, but there's no platform. It's so subjective. It's so, so, so subjective. So I don't think that you need to run around chasing their feedback and trying to make them happy. In fact, if they've said no, they're exactly who you don't want to make happy. Um, but in terms of memoir, yeah, it's tough right now. Does not mean it will always be tough.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Much appreciated.
And I hope
Okay.
for your sake that happens soon.
Thank you.
Okay, Emily, you are up next.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Jessica, for your time. So my question is, I guess if you're hypothetically speaking, if you were querying for a second or third time and a different project, right? And you had perhaps gotten feedback or a partial request previously from an agent, do you recommend then adding that to your query letter if you're reaching out to that same agent again and saying, oh, you had sort of liked a previous project of mine, or do you recommend just going in completely, without any reference to a previous reach out? And the second piece of that is, and do you still say this is my debut novel
Well, it's your debut until you get published,
until you
right?
get published? So it's not
First
like I'm,
thing you get published
yeah, okay,
is your debut. So don't worry about that.
okay,
You also don't have to label it as your debut necessarily. You could say this would be my debut, I guess.
okay, yeah,
Not really
yeah,
a big deal. It's not really up to you. Or well, it's not really a big issue either way. Um, I do think that it's always nice if you have a rapport with someone to say, you read my previous book, blank, and you said blank about it, if it was something nice and something that you feel comfortable pasting in. If they ask to see your next project, you absolutely should say, dear agent, you asked to see my next project after seeing blank. I'm here to introduce this. I don't know why a lot of writers think we're making it up. We're not, I promise. When we say we want to see the next thing, we really do want to see the next thing. We don't have time to lie. So, yeah, I think if you have a nice rapport with somebody, you should if it feels natural.
okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And that's a really good sign, by the way.
I'm going to get that printed as a t-shirt for myself for Christmas. I don't have time to lie. Aileen, you're up next.
Hi.
Thank you so much. This is really helpful. Uh, Earlier, you were talking about potentially agents taking on too many clients,
Mhm.
and that should be a warning bell. And I think I would like to have your advice on how we find out how many clients an agent is taking on. I mean, you can go in and see what deals they've made, but they're not necessarily all at the same time. And so I'm just curious how I figure that out.
Well, okay. So first of all, it's pretty rare for someone to take on so many clients that it gets irresponsible. So this is it's a story because it's rare. You know how we just don't
Okay.
always come home and say, guess what? The most normal thing ever happened. We don't we
Fair
don't we
enough.
don't do that. I suppose if you are in an offer call, you could ask how many clients have you taken on this year?
Ah, so okay, so it would be after, it would be in the interview process after.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait until you are on an offer call to ask something like that.
I
And
will add it to the list I'm developing in optimism.
yeah, that's good. But again, this is like a very unusual problem. It just stood out to us because it seemed so shockingly irresponsible. It's one of those things where, yeah, if you knew nothing about the industry, you would think you could take on a whole bunch of clients in a month. But yeah,
Okay, thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Michelle. Oops, hang on. Let me get the. Yeah. And then Michelle, you have a question.
Yeah, mine is probably a pretty quick question, but when sending out queries, like what is the standard number of agents to query? Is there a standard number? Is there something that's recommended? Is it one at a time?
Oh no, don't do one at a time. You'll be waiting forever. I think it depends on your genre. If you're pitching in a genre where there are a ton of potential agents for you, Maybe do 20 and start to see what your request rate is after about 3 months. It's taking longer, of course, to get requests these days, so 3 months isn't necessarily when you'll hear back from everybody. But you want to start seeing that you're getting more than just form letters, and some people are saying yes. Say you send out 20 and you get all form letters, there's probably something in your pitch letter that you could change to be more effective. So you don't want to send out to everybody all at once, because it seems that there is a certain way the world works where if you send out 100 of them, the very next day you will find a fatal error in your query. It's just one of those things. So give yourself a lot of chances to pivot, a lot of chances to see how it's going. And if you start to get a ton of requests, of course, you can send out more.
Can I add a question onto this, just because
Yeah.
some people recommend like dividing your agent target list into A's, B's, and C's,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
doing an ABC thing. Some people go all A's first. Do you have a
Oh, I wouldn't go.
right,
I would
because of
not go
that
all
fatal
A's.
flaw.
No, and well, that, and also you just want to make sure, because you get one chance per agent per book, right? So you want to be absolutely sure that this version of the query is going to get responses before you send it to your dream agent, if
Mhm.
you have one.
So you would actually start with a B or a C list even.
In fact, I would, yes.
Okay, good advice. Thank you.
But
Thanks,
everyone
Michelle.
needs to allow some room for error. Most people don't get it right on the first try. Most people do have to go through a round of form letters, and then they realize there's something they need to do, and then they get more help and it starts working better.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Michelle. Aileen, did you put your hand up again, or you did put it up again? Okay, here you go. I'm repinning you.
Okay. And my next question is a totally different area. One of the things, there's this fellow who does statistics on various types of genres. His name's Alex Newton, and he has something called K-lytics.
Hmm.
And one of the things he says is that in historic fiction, one of the top 3 areas that's popular is World War II books. And I sent out queries on a World War II book I wrote. And when I talked to agents on Zoom, when I queried, I got the same response all the time. Oh, World War II's been done. Nobody wants it anymore. And then, of course, more World War II books keep coming out. And I wonder what it is that makes it so unpopular with agents when it seems to be popular with the reading public.
Well, there's a delay, first of all. So when you send something out and then you see it on the shelf, you can assume about 18 months
Sure.
between when it's sold and when it's on the shelf. Sometimes longer if it's nonfiction, because it could be sold on proposal. So then they have to write the whole book. In terms of when an area is saturated, unfortunately, that is subjective. I personally don't think I can stomach any more romantasy, but everyone else seems to be fine. I also got tired of dystopia well before everyone else. I kept being like, come on, the world has ended enough times. Can we move on, please? And yeah, I seem to call it early, the end of these things. There's not any way to know for sure if it's well and truly over is a trend until you try it. And the reason that we worry about this is that if every publisher has one for every season coming up for the next few years, they're not going to be able to buy more. Usually they don't want their books to compete with each other. They usually say it's cannibalizing sales. I don't know why they use that word, but that is the verb they use. We don't want to do anything to cannibalize sales. So generally, they're not going to put forth 2 books on the same topic in the same season. So
Okay.
that'll slow you down. It's just a finite number of spots.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. But again, we
Well-
don't know for sure what everyone has.
Well, no. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Carol, you're up next.
Hi.
Okay, so I've had pretty good success with my query. And I found that I usually have to wait 2 to 4 months to get a request for a full or something. Usually I get either nothing or a request for a full, but how long should I be waiting once someone has the full manuscript in their hands?
Well, unfortunately, there's not really that much you can do about it, right? Your only choices are to wait, to check in, or to withdraw it. I don't recommend you withdraw it because then it's a no for sure. It'll put you out of your misery and of uncertainty, but that's all it will do. Checking in every, if you check in at 6 months or so, it used to be around 3. I'd say now 6 months or so is normal. Check in at 6 months, then every 3 months after that. I think waiting is your best option though, because then they're the most likely to read it, get to it. Yes, continue to check in, but try not to get too impatient with them while you wait. All you have to do is seem nice and pleasant and not angry with them for taking too long.
Hey.
I promise we're not just watching TV all day, being like, ha ha ha, all these writers who want me to get back to them, but I'm going to eat bonbons. No, it's not like that at all. We just have, I liken it to that scene in Miracle on 34th Street when they're dumping all the mail on the desk. It's kind of like that. It's just there's so much mail.
Yeah, I think so you're saying 6 months and then every 3 months after that. There's one person who's had it for a year and he still says, I'm still considering. But yeah, so that's not unusual
Unfortunately normal.
that happen. Oh, okay.
A year is not outside of the realm of normalcy these days, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
And good luck with your book, Carol.
Yeah, this is great. Getting requests is a really great sign.
Cassia, you have a question.
Yes. I'm curious, is it normal for an author to have 2 agents? Like I read somewhere, you are not looking for poetry. So I was wondering, can an author have one agent for sci-fi and another for poetry?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Usually it's one author for fiction, one for nonfiction, or one for children's, one for adult. But yeah, you can break it up any way you want to.
Oh, okay, so it's not considered gauche.
No, it's not gauche. It's it makes sense because just because someone is good at poetry doesn't mean they're good at every other genre, So it allows people to specialize, and as long as everyone knows what's happening and they're okay with it, totally fine.
So let's say if I have one agent for sci-fi and another for poetry, I should inform both agents that I have another agent?
Yes.
Okay.
You have to, because the author-agent agreement generally says that they're going to be your sole and exclusive agent.
Got it.
Unless you tell them otherwise. So they will have to amend the agreement for you.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. But yeah, totally normal. Everyone will be fine with that. Your sci-fi agent will be glad they don't have to do poetry. Your poetry agent will be glad they don't have to do sci-fi.
Okay.
It's totally fine. You just have to keep them aware. So if your sci-fi agent is sending out a novel, your poetry agent probably shouldn't be sending out things at the same time. It's up to them.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the question, Cassia. And actually, I want to add on to the end of that, talking about contracts and what exactly is contracted. Is your agent contracted in the normal situation for like all books or for a particular book?
Depends on the agent. Depends on the agency. Some of them are this book and anything else you write within a year. Some of them are only this book. Some of them are the agent has right of first refusal on your next projects. I would say in general, it's whatever you're working on. I'm the agent for everything unless otherwise arranged.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of the industry norm is that it's an ongoing relationship until terminated.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. Thank you.
Or let's say that somebody sends a project and their agent just doesn't like it and they say, well, go find someone else for this one. That can be done too.
But after the first look, like it would be bad form to like not give your agent the first look.
Oh, that's a fireable offense. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. All right. Sean, you have a question?
Hi, thank you. Just first of all, I want to say I'm a huge supporter of, or I guess viewer of, listener of Manuscript Academy. So
Yeah.
it's been just kind of I live in Singapore, and so for me, there's a little less access to a writing community. So it's just been hugely helpful. And Shirin, like your class, I've taken the publishing intensive, and I just want to thank both of you, like for all the great resources you provide. I know probably all of us are very, very grateful for it. I joined late because I was in another craft workshop, and so I apologize if this is already answered in some way, and I can just listen to the recording later if that's the case. But I was curious, like, what your philosophy is, Jessica, on when writers follow up with agents. So sometimes I've heard differing pieces of advice. So only follow up like if you've got an offer, and follow up with the agents that maybe you want to hear back from. But others have said if you get a full request to follow up, at least with agents that you are maybe interested in hearing back from and haven't. So I was just curious what your philosophy is on that.
You know, I don't think that there is one necessarily right answer. And as time norms expand, I think everyone's going to have a different answer in terms of how long you wait to check in too. So I do think it's worth a look at each agency's guide, what their rules are, if they hate follow-ups, if they welcome follow-ups, how long it usually takes for them to get back to people. I mean, I had someone follow up the same week recently, and I'm just like, oh, you have no idea. So you want to avoid that. You want to avoid giving the impression that you just have no idea how long all of this takes. But if you're within the realm of normal, I think it's okay. You know, send a polite check-in. Hi, agent, I'm writing to check in on this. I'd love to hear from you. You know, just something normal, nice in the same email thread. Again, I would wait at least 3 months, at least, to check in. But then if you just check in every 3 months after that, I don't see anything wrong with that. If you get a snippy reply back, leave them alone. But I think that's generally normal. I don't really understand the checking in when you get another full request thing. I've heard of agents asking writers, you know, hey, I requested this. Let me know if you get any more requests. I've heard of that. In general, I don't think you have to do that. But yeah, if you get an offer, I think you should let everyone know, even if they only have your query.
Thank you.
It doesn't make it awkward if, say, you have an agent who is in one genre, you love that agent in that genre, that agent doesn't have any experience in this other genre that you want to write in. Would it be considered very bad form and a fireable offense, as you said, if you thought, oh, you know, I would really like to keep this agent in this genre, but go for a more experienced agent in that other genre? I imagine it would be very tricky to negotiate.
That would be tricky. The other thing is, it's not like that agent is working in a vacuum. They have colleagues who probably work in that genre who can help them and who can say, oh, yeah, well, send it to this person, and this person, and then it'll work out. So in
Right,
general, there will be a way for them to responsibly work in both genres. If
right,
there's no
right.
one at that agency who's ever done anything like that before, then yeah, you have to ask them what their plan is
hmm
and
hmm
see if their plan sounds good. Expanding into new genres isn't unheard of. We had to expand into our existing genres at one point too. So it takes time, but it's also just, you know, has that agent read a lot in that genre? Do they know editors who are interested in that genre? Those are really your two big questions.
Have they read, and do they know editors in that genre?
I think those are two great places to start. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. George, you have a question.
Yes. Does it strengthen a query letter if you can say that your novel has been line edited, professionally line edited, that is?
So
Would
I
it
was
be
just
something to include?
you might as well. To me, that fits in the category of icing, not cake. So I was just talking to a friend about this. I can't tell if someone's book has been professionally edited, just as I can't tell if they got an MFA. I mean, sometimes, frankly, people have that MFA style, but most of the time, I can't tell if they have an MFA. I can't tell if they had a professional editor. All I can tell is, did they edit this for a long time? Have they been writing for a long time? Does it seem like it works? So yeah, it's a nice added bonus, but I don't want anyone to think that they have to have their book professionally line edited before it comes to us. And no one's going to reject you for a comma out of place.
Thank you.
Thanks, George. And Michelle, you have another question for us.
I do have another question, and I have another one after this, but I'll get back in line. Do you need to have another book in the works when you query, or is that only if you're working on a series?
So if you're working on a series, you need the synopses for the subsequent books, but you only need book one written. So what you want to be able to say is, this is a standalone novel with strong series potential, and I have synopses for the later books available upon request. If you were writing picture books, yes, you will need more ready to go, because people will want to see several of your ideas before they take you on. In general, though, no, you generally want to be able to talk about where you'd like to see your career going, ideas that you have, but you don't necessarily need another book ready already. They will probably ask you to start writing something new as soon as your book goes on submission, though, both to keep you busy and out of our hair, and to keep you from stressing out.
Great. And Michelle, you're the end of the line. So you get to ask. Yes, ask again.
So this is a question that I don't know, is maybe difficult for you to answer, but how difficult is it? And Shirin, you probably have an answer to this too. Like, how difficult is it for an author to make a living? And how many of your writers have day jobs in addition to their writing?
I would say most writers now have day jobs.
Mm.
Because if you think of, even if you sell a book every year, is the advance going to be high enough to live on for that year and to save a little bit for the subsequent year if it takes longer to sell that following book? So most writers do have day jobs.
Yeah.
And we kind of prefer, because then it's a little bit less pressure all around for everybody.
I would say that, Michelle, unless you pinged into the stratosphere, 19 million bucks a year, okay, I can live on that. But anything short of that, most of my writer friends who are published authors, we count ourselves successful if all we do has got something to do with writing, right? So it's like, but most of us can't live just on our royalties, but we can live on our royalties, plus we teach, plus we, and those things add up, and we're always within the writing bubble. For most writers, that's it, that's success. That means you're living off your writing, but it's very, very rarely on your royalties only. Very rarely. And that's just told everybody here, I'm not one of those. But it's a great life though, if you can do it, just to be surrounded by the writing life. So everybody try, yay. Okay, we're at 6:43. I don't see any more hands raised. I can let Jessica go home and have an earlier night because she's been feeling a little bit under the weather and was still nice enough to turn up and talk to us. But is there any last question out there that anybody wants to ask? No?
I do.
All right.
I do.
Then can you take your mics off and oops, was there someone?
I saw one. The woman with the great hat had a question.
Cassia.
I'm just curious. Have you ever had an author who you just liked the book, but personality-wise, you just did a match and you had to send the author off to a colleague or somebody else?
Yes. Yes. It's interesting because you never really know until you work together if you're going to work well together. And I think this was somebody who kind of expected that I was her agent, but also her on-call therapist. So at some point, you know, if one person is taking more energy than everyone combined, it's a sign.
Thanks, Cassia.
Thank you.
And George, it looks like you have the last question of the night.
Quickly,
Oops.
is there
There's something wrong because we've lost Jessica. Let me just put Jessica back.
Thanks.
Go ahead, George. What was your question?
Oh, okay. Quickly, is there a database I could use to find agents for YA/middle grade?
Yeah, you can go to manuscriptwishlist.com, look under the search link in the menu, and there should be a smart link you can click for all the agents who are looking for middle grade and for young adult. And you can kind of search both to make sure you get someone who does both. So do you know how to do a Command F or a Control F search on your computer?
I do now.
Okay, great. So yes, worth looking up. YouTube will tell you, but if anyone out there needs to know. So say, for example, you're on the middle grade, you can do a Control F search for young adult. So then you can see the folks who do both. And the opposite, say you're on the list for young adult, you can do a Control F for middle grade.
What was the name of that again? Just the name. You mentioned
Manuscriptwishlist.com.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And yeah, that works no matter what two genres you're working on. If you want an agent who does both, you could be on the sci-fi list, Control F for poetry, whatever works for you.
Okay, so now finally we are going to let Jessica go home and have a little rest because she was. Thank you for being with us, Jessica. I know you were under the weather, so thank you so much. You would never have guessed it from your energy and from how warm and relaxed and inviting you were. So if everybody could turn their mics off and give Jessica a little round of applause before we go.
The silent.
Big round of applause, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thanks, Thank you.
And I hope good luck, everybody, with all your queries. And Jessica, I hope we speak soon.
I hope so too. All right. Good night, everyone. Good luck.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Jessica. Bye. Thanks again.